Hello and welcome to a new episode of Pat's Chat. Today, another awesome guest, benjamin.croc, Ben, from France originally. Hi, Ben. How are you doing today?
Hi, Patrick. I'm well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, awesome. As I said, French guy, but in Malaysia since 10 years, I think exactly 2011, you relocated over here, started your own company. You're the co-founder and CEO of Brio HR. We talk a little bit about that later. First of all, thank you very much for making the time joining me today. And I'm sure this will be an awesome talk today with you. As I said, from France originally, that's where you grew up. Whereabouts in France?
So I'm from Normandy. I'm not sure if you know Normandy. It's very close by Paris, which is, of course, the anchor point for everyone in France, from a city called Rouen. Yeah, a nice mid-sized city of France.
Not in the big city, right? But still nearby. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, you spent your first years there around. I figured out you did two master's degree. I had to ask you about that. Like, how has someone an idea not to do one master's but two masters? What was the idea for you behind that?
Yeah, actually, the sequence plays a role in understanding a bit the journey, towards having two masters. So in France, it's very normal to go until the master's level when you are completing your studies. So it's very natural to at least complete one master. Not everyone does, but a lot of people do. Then I started working actually right after my studies, my first master. I started working, spent a few times in PwC and then CMA CGM. I think we will probably come back to this. But then after those few years, I realized that I wanted to expand my horizon professionally, but also personally and so on. And that's where actually I decided after thinking a bit about it and after getting some information online and so on, that's where I decided to complete an MBA at INSEAD. So that's what ultimately led me to have a second master's. But the two masters themselves are very different from each other. And also even the person I was at the time of my first master, so a student, versus the person I was during the second one, which is already a young professional, I would say,
Yes, yes.
made it a bit more logical.
Yeah, okay, that's I think the very big difference, right? You said the 2016 MBA, Master in Business Administration, the first one you did right after, well, the mentoring school in Master of Science in Business, Finance, and Management, right? That is an interesting topic you just mentioned. How would you say is the difference or the experience for you, like doing masters with no working experience compared to the one that you had like already 10 years of experience on your job?
Wow, that's a great question because I think the difference is major. I think as a student, I would not even really ask myself what to do, what did I want to do. I had no clue what it was really working and so on. So I kind of went with the flow and didn't particularly like school and like studying like academics at the time. So it was an experience where okay, I had to get it done basically. Then I started working in those different professional experiences, and at some point I really evolved, and I think it's a fairly common path or trajectory among a young professional, I would say, where at some point I had a realization that I felt, even though it was from a good school in France and so on, I didn't learn as much as what I could have learned and so on. So it became at some point a bit of not a regret, but something, that I didn't maximize. And I was a bit unhappy about this. So when I started the MBA at INSEAD, it was completely different because I knew what it was to work. So I could enjoy the year off. Even if it was an intense year, it was kind of a year off work still. And also I could enjoy really much more the very fact of being learning new things. And also I could relate it much more to practical realities of the work life. So those three things combined make it an extremely different mindset approach. And in my opinion, impact as well.
Interesting. So definitely, it sounds like your recommendation would be work first and then get back to your MBA and make use of your first experience.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that you don't have to do an MBA. It's really something that
Mm-hmm.
if you want to do, I would encourage it 1,000 times over. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't want,
Yeah.
I will not try to convince you. So I really think it depends on everyone. But you're right. I mean, practical experience to connect the studies with the actual reality of things. I think it's makes a major difference. But even when you do your initial studies, you know, you can have opportunities for internships and so on. So I think
Mm-hmm.
you can still make the best of those to have this, this real
Yeah.
fit between theory and reality.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, very interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Ben. After you complete your master's in like business finance management, I said that you started your first job in PwC in France as an auditor. Of course, is that the logical step? Is that what you were looking for, or was that more like, yeah, I don't know what to do. Let's start as an auditor, and then I can still see what I want to do in life.
It's also a bit funny. So there is a lot of things that in the end, when I look back on each of them, they seem strange to explain in isolation, you know. But in the end, there is always a chain of events, obviously, that lead to that. So when I completed my masters, I didn't know really what to do. So I used to play a lot of badminton. I used to do badminton player. That's kind of what led me to Malaysia in a way.
Oh yeah.
In France,
Okay.
it's not very mediatized, but in Malaysia, we all know how important badminton is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And actually, I wanted initially my first studies, actually my bachelor was in sports science. And then because of some specific events, I finally enrolled in this business school in France where I got my masters. Um, but you know, I was destined to be a sports teacher, maybe, you know, like literally I was not really asking myself too much questions at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to having my masters, to the end of that stretch of my studies, I actually met someone through badminton. You know, it's a badminton contact in a badminton tournament, saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm a financial auditor. It's amazing. It's a PwC. It's a great company. You should give it a look, give it a try, and so on." And basically arranged me to go for interviews with PwC. So a financial auditor, but at the time I had no knowledge of really accounting and so on. You know, it was not like deep detailed knowledge of accounting, but I ended up helped with this badminton background in terms of contact and recommendation and so on. I ended up being an auditor. So, you know, I completely came into it randomly. What happened, however, is that since day one, I really loved it. Like I really love the colleagues, I really love the job, really, and it's a job that sometimes is seen as a bit dull, but actually you learn so much and you interact with so many interesting people that I actually loved it, and I went quickly from not knowing really what PwC was even to a PwC auditor, and I really enjoyed it. So really, what led me to being a financial auditor is weird, but then I really became a financial auditor and did a few years with them.
Okay, it seemed you liked the finance sector, as you just mentioned before. Your next path or your next step in the career path was this global shipping company, where you became the head of global finance. So what was first? You looking towards Malaysia, or you looking towards like a new job as this global or head of global finance? Sorry.
So it was really the geography. I really wanted with my partner at the time to discover more of the world. Even though I loved PwC, after a few years I felt that it was time for me to look at something else and so on. But more importantly, because I always valued the personal side at least as much as the professional side. You know, it was never about the career. It was what would the career enable, and I wanted to enable the international, I would say, perspective. So I started looking for a job in Southeast Asia, Why Southeast Asia more than anywhere else? Because of the badminton. Clearly, I mean, it's
Okay.
Asia is the continent of badminton, and I had the opportunity to come to Malaysia
Yeah.
a while before to train actually with some of the best players in the world at the time. So
Oh wow.
I mean,
Okay.
for Malaysians who may watch this or listen to this, we were training with Miss Boon Sidek, who went on to be the coach of Lee Chong Wei,
Yeah. Wow.
the
Okay.
famous.
Impressive.
So I had really Southeast Asia. Yes. Yeah, so I had really Southeast Asia in mind, and then that's how I personally, but we with my partner stumbled on this opportunity to go to Malaysia. So that's what led to
Okay.
CMACGM.
Cool. Awesome. So, as I mentioned before, that was 2011, 10 years ago. The question I usually get, well, I'm not 10 years here, but I figured out, basically, I shared that with you before, that my first time here in Malaysia was also in 2011. I didn't even know that before, but then I was on and off. But what was it for you? Why did you stay 10 years in Malaysia?
That's I mean, a good question with many good answers, I think. But definitely,
Yeah.
when I started in 2011, the contract was for 1 year renewable, and that's kind of the time horizon that I set at the time. Again, without asking myself too many questions. Uh, but then the first year was amazing. I discovered really this country and this region. The second year, I could go a bit deeper in all this. In parallel, some opportunities at work came in that led me, to take on more responsibilities, to discover new areas, to have interesting challenges to take over. So in the end, it quickly became like 3-4 years. Then I spent a year in Singapore to do the MBA in SEA that I was mentioning earlier. But because we were kind of established also in Malaysia, I came back after the MBA to Malaysia, and yeah, again, it's kind of a combination of personal interest. I love the country, I love the environment, I love the people, and so on. So there was never a question for me about leaving this place. And in parallel, interesting professional opportunities that led me to really discover new things all the time and so on. So,
Yeah.
without realizing it, I can say it's 10 years, which is even strange for myself at some point.
10 years in Malaysia, again for the shipping company. You changed to McKinsey, to Lazada. And then in 2018, that's why we want to talk a little bit more about it. Suddenly you had the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. I assume it was not suddenly, but what was the process you went through? What happened in 2018 that you figured out enough with the large enterprises? You want to start your own company?
Yeah, I mean, this also actually was a chain of events that was
Yeah.
not really foreseeable.
Surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really when I think about it, when I reflect on it, based on your question and so on, I realize it myself in real time, basically. But I joined when I joined McKinsey, it was something that I wanted to do for some time. So that's probably the first time where I had really engineered what I wanted to do, meaning that when I was at CMACGM, I discovered consulting. I discovered those big consulting firms such as McKinsey, and I wanted to do that. So I did the MBA in order to actually be able to then join McKinsey and so on, because it was kind of a gateway to those companies. So I did McKinsey. I loved it. Again, I loved it. Was extremely happy with the people I met, the project I worked on, and so on. So a friend of mine actually was trying to attract me to Lazada since some time already. He was the CEO of Lazada Malaysia, Christophe Lejeune, and was from time to time reaching out with some interesting opportunities and so on. But I wanted to stay on with McKinsey. At some point, actually, I became a father, and so I decided to take a long paternity leave. I decided to take 4 months paternity leave to be there, basically, to participate, and that's what you can do in a consulting job when you're in between projects. There is kind of some flexibility which I wanted to leverage. McKinsey was extremely supportive, so one more great point for this company, to be honest. And then roughly at that time, Christophe, so the CEO of Lazada at the time, Lazada Malaysia, came to me with that opportunity to be the head of strategy and so on. And the conjunction, again, the stars that align at this time where the work-life balance when you're a McKinsey consultant is skewed toward work. I was a new dad. I had this position at Lazada that was actually of high interest. So that's how I kind of decided to leave McKinsey to join Lazada. And actually, the Brio HR, the entrepreneurship thing, is also something that kind of mingled in this. When I left McKinsey, I would never even think about becoming an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. I would never even think about HR tech, which is what we do at Brio HR and so on. Mm-hmm. But some kind of reflection happened between McKinsey and Lazada during this 4 months paternity leave, basically, which led me to, in the end, only think about becoming an entrepreneur in HR tech after this stretch. So it's really a realization that companies that I've seen, that I've worked with, when I was at PwC and when I was at a consultant or an employee and so on, I had a realization and at some point a reflection that there was a gap in terms of HR tools, in terms of some HR practices and so on, that I wanted to contribute in filling up for the good of the people and the companies themselves. So from no entrepreneur at all to I absolutely need to be an entrepreneur in 3 months, basically.
Wow. Okay. I mean, okay, you came up with this idea, and before we move into Brio, really, I have one more question, and that's what I ask sometimes. You are a co-founder. That means there are other founders or other co-founders. What is your perspective on that? Because the discussion we often have, like in startups, is like, do you go alone as a founder, or do you do your own company? You can do as you wish, or do you go with co-founders? You choose the co-founders way. Can you give you just like your perspective on how you see the advantages, really, or also maybe some of the challenges or struggles that you had being a co-founder?
Mm-hmm. That's of course a very interesting and crucial aspect, in my opinion, of entrepreneurship, of launching a company. Of course, different people will have different preferences. For me, it was never really a question. In fact, I never really strategized on being alone or having co-founders and so on, even though if you had asked me at the time, I would have said I would prefer having co-founders. It was not necessarily something engineered again. However, when I started thinking about what would become Brio HR, and when I started sharing with some friends who were actually inquiring about, like we were just catching up, what do you do, what you want to do, and so on and so on, it became extremely obvious that Nabil Udgiri, my co-founder, would actually be with me from day one in this adventure. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason is that we connected on the RIA right away. Like it was clearly a passion of both of us. It was not one being convinced, you see, by the other. Yeah. You see what I mean? Yeah. So the how it happened was very natural. Of course, then you still need to consider a few factors. Are we compatible in terms of personality? With Nabil, we had the chance to be friends, but not too close friends, meaning that we were good friends at INSEAD. That's where we met. And then after INSEAD, we were catching up on a regular basis and so on. Yeah. But not too close, so that there is no like particularly specific emotional things and so on. We are good friends, like to have a good discussion together, think about things together and so on, which actually fit perfectly with the initial stages of should we do it? Because for a few months it was should we do it, right? It was not. And then once it has started, so the impact of having a co-founder and of course a very complementary co-founder. I think it's important. I think it's a good advantage to have a very complementary co-founder. So of course we wanted to do HR tech and so on with a component business, but of course a huge tech foundation and so on, which is not my background, but which is Nabil's background. So there was a lot of complementarity. And then since then, definitely having a co-founder, in my opinion, is a huge way of releasing some of the stress of always fact checking or double checking what you have in mind. I tend sometimes to want to have a lot of ideas, a lot of fast decisions and so on, but we always have discussion that then help maybe a good idea to begin with to become the idea that can be implemented and structured and so on. You see what I mean? So it's
Yeah, I
really
see. Yeah. That that makes a lot of sense. So okay, yeah, one more of those coincidences that you referred to about before. So you met in the MBA program. So that's cool. It's a good story. I like that. And so let's turn now to the company itself, BrioHR, HR tech company. Your mission is to develop the best end-to-end HR management software. So that's your mission. Again, it's BrioHR, not Brio. But maybe you can elaborate on that one, because it's a good idea behind that.
yeah, actually, so the pronunciation itself, we are fairly okay and used to both. So Brio, we are not very particular about it. The fun part of it is that when we started with Brio as a name, I thought it would be indeed a word that was widely used worldwide. Because in France, it's actually a word that we use a lot and so on. And because it's a Latin word, I thought that spread like any other language would have spread. So Brio, actually, the first few discussions, and even still today, the first few discussions we have with clients, with prospects and so on is, by the way, what does Brio mean? So that's funny because very quickly I realized that the assumption that Brio would be a well-known word, but it was not at all the case. Uh, and indeed it became actually a good way to start a discussion, a good icebreaker
It's an
for everyone
icebreaker,
to
yeah.
get with each other. And because you specifically ask about the meaning and so on, so Brio means managing in our case, of course, managing your employees in style, in a flamboyant way. So we felt that's what we really wanted to achieve for our clients and so on, by providing the right application. So yeah, doing something in style, doing something with Brio, it's something that is actually very commonly used in France.
Yeah, okay, very interesting, very nice. Now tell us a little bit more about the software itself. I mean, how did you start, and what is I mean, okay, you say it's a management software, but tell us more about like what the software really can do and how it helps a company to manage their HR.
Yeah, sure. So the premise of BrioHR is really that we felt that I would say mid to large SMEs, like the mid market in the region, were lacking the tools to really manage their HR as efficiently as they could, and potentially as efficiently as they should. So from the very beginning, our vision was to provide an all-in-one platform, because we believe that even though there are great softwares that are fragmented, covering specific aspects of HR like recruitment or payroll or something else, we really felt that there was a gap in terms of having all-in-one solutions that really cover the full employee spectrum. And actually, this lack of all-in-one solution was triggering companies and HR professionals in particular, to manage data from different sources. So you would have 4, 5, 6 listing of employees in the company, which you have to reconcile, but most of the time they will be different. So if you look in the payroll, you will have a different list of employees than if you look, for example, in the performance management, and that can be multiplied by 2 or 3. So we really felt that the answer we wanted to bring to this was all in one, without compromising on the individual segment. So that's where we came with the concept of BrioHR, which really helps companies to really streamline their HR processes and their HR organization by having an integrated application covering recruitment. And when you have hired someone, you would have a new joiner onboarding module, which really would digitize the full process of new joiner onboarding, which is even more prevalent and interesting during this time of remote work and distributed work and so on. Once an employee would then be in the company, we would cover the full core HR and HR admin module. So, for example, we would have the employee database, the employee records, the employee documents, but also leaves management, payroll management, expense claims management, time management, directory, automated org chart, organization chart. So all the core HR that would usually be, again, fragmented and very manual would be all integrated, so flowing seamlessly from recruitment to onboarding to core HR. And finally, we have a module that actually is very popular, which is performance management, which helps once again digitize and make performance management processes much more robust while taking much less time to administer and to put in place. And this covers, for example, of course, monitoring of KPIs or OKRs, documenting of one-on-ones, but also competency management, automation of the appraisal process, and so on. So all this, if you want, packed in a user-friendly app, that would basically avoid having to log into different softwares and so on. And again, if I want to finish on what I was explaining at the very beginning, one of the huge impact of having the all-in-one is adoption. It's much easier to have employees follow a process or document something in the same application that they would use on a day-to-day basis, rather than have them do something on email, something on PowerPoint, something on Excel, something in the software, and something maybe verbal.
Yeah.
So that's basically what we wanted to pack.
It sounds really complete, exciting, to be honest, end to end, as you say. How did you start? What was the first module that you came out with, and you started basically that can I call it tool, or the platform?
Yes, no, that's interesting, and that's of course the fruit of many discussions and so on, where to start and how to start. At the very beginning, so we it was the two of us, right? Me and my co-founder, really like trying to figure out what we will be doing and so on. Even though we have a very clear idea of what we wanted to accomplish, indeed the first step and second step, is not that clear when you have never done it and so on. So we basically during the first few months, we did all we could to basically get a prototype, I would say, of the ground, something that would really help us to convey not only our vision but also the value that it can bring to companies and so on. So with that, fairly early on, we came to see investors saying, "Okay, here is what we want to do, and here is how it could look like." So of course, the prototype was extremely not the thing that you would be extremely proud of and so on, but actually you would click and something would happen, and it was enough to kind of convey the vision. So we for the first few months, it was really about getting a prototype with the limited resources we had off the ground, and that's really how we started. The first module was the new joiner onboarding module. The new joiner onboarding module, because we felt that it would embody our vision of being an employee engagement tool. Even if we cover the full admin and core HR part, we wanted to enable companies to have great employee experience as well. And this is more through onboarding, performance, and so on. So we started with onboarding, and actually we also had a lot of pull from some very big clients who wanted to basically review their onboarding practices and digitize them. So that's why we started with, even though, again, from the very beginning, it was clear that it should be an all-in-one. So it was not an onboarding first and then we will see. From the very beginning, everything was optimized for onboarding to be a component of the all-in-one.
Okay, I see. That is highly interesting. I would have bet like you started with the payroll, because that's what I see a lot in the market. Different for your...
It was a big debate.
Yeah. Absolutely. So interesting to see that you started differently. I want to quickly ask you this question, because you mentioned just before, like, especially during the current time, right? The lockdown, the COVID that we have, the onboarding is a lot facilitated with that one. So is it for you? I don't want to talk about a good time, but is it more like, was that time more like an accelerator for your company? Did that situation really help you to push your company and your platform out?
I'd say that beyond the bad things that might have been brought by the decision, because we also, as a young company, had to manage a lot of this as well. So indeed, we tried to see the positive and try to leverage the situation as much as we could. And for sure, we took the opportunity to go deeper in some parts of the product. So I would say that yes, we tried to leverage this time as much as we could. In the end, I would not say that we would not have done that if it was not for the pandemic. It's still something we want really to be product focused. So our clients usually see it and they love it. Basically, the level of support, but also the speed at which the software evolves. So it's something that we have deeply ingrained. We are really we want really to have the best platform, and we work hard to that. Pandemic or not, I would say, or lockdown or not. In the end, I would say that still clearly the team members are a bit tired of those, those work from home things and so on. Even though it allowed us to focus on a few areas, net, I'd rather we all go back to the office and have a good team mindset and so on.
Yes, yeah, I understand. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Let me think. Maybe one more question I can push in here because I it's just a general interest. Now that you're 10 years in Malaysia and you developed the software, I think mainly for the Malaysian market, right? But I would assume you go to other markets, maybe in Southeast Asia or wherever they play badminton. But how would you see like the that is just a general question, the biggest differences in managing HR between Malaysia and France? Do you see like big difference or gaps there? So is it even possible to use the same software with the same processes like throughout Europe or let's say France specifically?
Yeah, that's a very interesting part. So we never intended BrioHR to be a Malaysian-based software for the Malaysian market, meaning that since day one, even before we started officially, it was for mostly Southeast Asia, meaning that we always knew that Malaysia was a great base to actually cater for the full region, but it was never really for Malaysia only. Of course, being in Malaysia, we started with Malaysia, but there is a fun fact to it, which is that we had the first ever three clients we had was one in Malaysia, one in Singapore, and one in Indonesia. So it was really the objective to cover the full region, to build something from day one that would be sophisticated enough for companies with multiple hundreds of employees. So it could go from 10 to, let's say, a few thousands, but also across countries. So we had the platform that since the beginning is geared toward the international, and today we have users in more than 15 countries actually. Even though practices from one country to the other differ, we still embedded a level of flexibility in BrioHR that helps an HR team based in, let's say, Malaysia or Singapore run a group of companies that are operating in multiple countries because of the flexibility and the configurability that we have inbuilt in BrioHR. So yeah, today we actually have clients in Europe. We have clients, of course, in all over Southeast Asia, and beyond companies, we have users in the US and so on and so on. So it was a big investment on our part to build the software that will help companies do that, because that was the gap that we had identified actually.
Awesome. Okay, really awesome. Thank you so much, Ben, for sharing your journey, your experience as an entrepreneur. Also, maybe my last question is sometimes like your tips for young guys that want to start a company, want to become entrepreneur. Usually we just see the tip of the iceberg. You have an awesome company, but that's not all of it. It's a struggle, it's pain, it's you sweat a lot. What is your message to young entrepreneurs?
So I would say that it's a message where basically I would say don't overestimate the risks. So I always have this policy when I think about things about kind of the no regret or the regret minimization framework, right? Which is not from me, of course, which consists in saying, when all is done, when it's like, I don't know, let's say I'm very old and so on, I want to look back and just make sure that I cannot say, oh, if only I had done this, or if only I had tried that, and so on. So my advice would be honestly to if you want to go for it, I will never try to force someone who is not sure. But if you want to go for it, my advice is just go for it. It starts with a resignation letter often. Go give this resignation letter. Of course, it doesn't have to be day one. You can start for a few weeks, for a few months, thinking about it, trying to do something on the side to validate a few hypotheses and so on. But I would say, yeah, don't overestimate the risk. Worst case, you'll find another job. And really, it's true. If you're determined enough to leave everything to start a company, you've got it. You've got the skill set that other companies will be looking for whenever you are yourself looking for a job. So that would be my advice.
Awesome.
I'm still a young entrepreneur myself. I mean, not that young, but young as an entrepreneur. So I hope I will refine my advice so that I can give as much as possible relevant things.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ben. I really appreciate your time that you took to have this kind of short chat. Great to meet with you. Thanks for your time, and I'm wishing you and the company all the best and great success also.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick. I mean, it was a pleasure chatting with you and on your show, and thanks a lot for the nice question that helps me, think back about what led me to this and reflect on my life. I hope it will be enjoyable for everyone. And yeah, thanks again for having me.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks for watching and listening to this episode with Ben, the co-founder and CEO of Brio HR. Thanks, Ben. Thanks to you. And I hope you enjoyed it. And then I see you next week for another episode of Pat's Chat. Thanks. Have a great day.